This is Sarah Khoja on December 7th at 10:24 Central Standard Time, interviewing Lexxi Clinton for the Voices of SMU Oral History Project. This interview is being recorded in the Newark Center of Digital Solutions in Fondren Library on the campus of SMU in Dallas, Texas. Ms. Clinton, good morning.
Good morning.
So to begin, could you start off by establishing your connection to SMU, what year you graduated in, what kind of degree did you obtain in your field of study?
Okay, so hi, I'm Lexxi Clinton. I graduated in May of 2021 with a double major in political science and philosophy and a specialization in political theory and a triple minor in law and legal reasoning, history, and corporate communication and public affairs. And then I was president of a couple organizations on campus during my time here.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for elaborating. Now, could you tell us when and where you were born?
I was born in Charlotte, North Carolina in 1998.
Okay, awesome. And then could you tell us a little bit about your family, if you had any siblings, things like that?
Yeah. So both my parents are immigrants. My mother is from Jamaica, but she's Chinese and Indian, and my dad is from Haiti. He's Haitian and French. And my sister, she's a couple years older than me. She went to UT Dallas, actually. I'm staying with her right now. And yeah, we moved from North Carolina to Texas when I was about 12, and then I went to, finished middle school and went to high school here in Texas, and then I stayed for college.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's so interesting. So we're just kind of getting into pre-college, pre-SMU life.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could tell us a little bit more about your kind of elementary, middle school, high school life, kind of how that looked for you?
Elementary school in North Carolina was what it was. I lived in a very white neighborhood. There was 3 black families. Growing up, we lived in a country club. And yeah, it was fine, I guess. I mean, I was, again, one of maybe 5 kids in my grade who were African American. But it really didn't bother me, and I didn't really notice it until way later in life. North Carolina schooling is different because they don't care about the state. When I came to Texas, they're like, you're going to learn Texas history. You're going to learn about the Alamo. And I was like, okay. Other states don't really do that. And then we moved here. I do think that schooling in Texas was more focused on extracurriculars, which was interesting. So I got really involved in a lot of different extracurriculars. And then obviously more focused on Texas, and I feel like a little less focused on introspective perspectives, I guess. My school was really, really, really good at football. So we won state championships in high school for football, but obviously I didn't care about that. And that wasn't really had anything to do with me. So I did speech and debate and things like that. And I was the first African American homecoming queen at my high school in 2017. So that was pretty terrible, but whatever. And yeah, it was a good high school, I guess. Ranking wise, it was a good high school.
Okay, awesome. And sorry, maybe you said this already, but where did you go to high school?
Cedar Park High School in Cedar Park, Texas.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So what prompted you to choose SMU? How did you hear about it?
My dad was like, look at the school. And I was like, Methodist? We're not Methodist. And he was like, no, I don't think they're Methodist. A lot of my coworkers went there. Neither one of my parents went to college. So they really didn't care where we went, but they just wanted it, A, to be affordable, which is not what I picked, and B, to give us a good education and a job after college. So my sister went to UT Dallas, and her picking her school, she didn't look outside of Texas. I did not want to stay in Texas. I was like, I don't like it here. I don't have rights. I don't want to stay here. So I applied to 12 schools, and I applied to, and I got into a lot of schools in the north, but they were just like, you're from out of state, so we're not going to give you any money. And that was the worst thing ever. So it came down between UT and SMU because UT had given me almost full ride. And I just did not want to go there. I lived, Cedar Park is super close to Austin. So I knew Austin like the back of my hand. It was boring to me. And their campus is like a bus stop in a street. I didn't want that at all. And then I applied to be a Hunt, and I was a finalist to be a Hunt. So I came and visited for that whole weekend. And I just fell in love with the university, with the look of it, with what I thought the opportunities could do for me, with the class sizes. I like a lot of attention from my teachers, and I knew that wasn't something I was going to get at UT. And the people, I had met a lot of people on campus that were just so nice and friendly, and I was like, this seems like a much better fit. And they did end up giving me other scholarships that made it possible to come here, so very exciting, very thrilled. Threw my butt in the car and came up to Dallas.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I like just went through the college admissions process like
Yeah.
2 or 3 years ago, so I can like totally understand.
It was terrible, but
Yes.
plus, like, obviously, neither one of my parents went to college, so they didn't know how to do it. So I was, like, doing it by myself, but that's okay.
Yeah, well, I think it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I love SMU. I see her problems, but I love her.
Okay, we will definitely get into this, so do not worry about it. All right, so did you have any like expectations coming into SMU? I know you touched on that a bit.
I think when I came to SMU, I was like, I'm going to be student body president. I'm going to be the best version of myself. And I think when a lot of students come to SMU, they have a lot of ideas about what their college experience is going to be, and they're not very open to change. And I don't think I wasn't open to change, but I was like, I'm going to be a poli-sci student. After college, I'm going to go to law school. I had all these concepts. I was like, I'm going to join these organizations. I'm going to be in a sorority. It's going to be perfect. And only maybe half of those things happened, and they happened in a completely different order than I anticipated. Yeah, I think I really tried to make a lot of new friends and really expand my own horizons in coming to SMU, specifically because there's so many cultural organizations that have events that like are not only fun but are teaching moments, and I don't think a lot of students here take advantage of that at all. Yeah, so I really, really enjoyed coming, and hopefully I didn't set up too many expectations for myself. I don't feel that way now. I don't feel like I was let down by the university. I feel like it did what it was supposed to do. I have my degrees. I have a job, XYZ.
Awesome, thank you. So, how welcoming was the campus when you first arrived, if you can think back to like kind of those freshman year moments?
My orientation group was really, really welcoming, and I'm also pretty outgoing, so it really didn't matter whether they were going to want to welcome me or not. They had no choice. Actually, my best friend now who lives in Chicago with me, I met him at orientation. He didn't end up graduating from SMU. He transferred, but I met him at like the first day at Aero. I was like, you are very pretty. We're going to be best friends. And he was like, okay. And we're still like really great friends. So they were pretty welcoming, but I think it was surprising when I came because my family's like middle class, slightly upper middle class maybe now. But seeing some of the wealth at SMU is quite surprising. And also the whiteness. I, again, am from a very white area, very white high school. Even so, I was like, there's a lot of white people here. And it was, I think, the type of white person that they had just, like, I know they don't have any friends of color. I know that they don't care that they don't have any friends of color. Like, at least the people from my high school were like, yeah, there are people of color here. We respect them, whatever. But it just didn't seem, they seemed like they had already made their friends. But, whatever the case may be. And then obviously when school started, I started attending like sorority events where they're like trying to get to know you. Those were terrible. They were not trying to get to know me. And at the time I even had straight hair. And it was just the worst thing ever. And I was like, this sucks. Y'all are racist. But, whatever happens, I guess.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I can totally understand where you're coming from. So, yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so kind of moving into like campus life, things like that. Were you involved in any like organizations or intramurals during your time here?
Too many. I was president of the Association of Black Students. I was president of the Kappa Mu chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I was the chief of staff of Student Senate. I've been Student Senate for all my 4 years of college as different positions, but I ended up as chief of staff. I was on the President's Advisory Board and also Dr. May J, Vice President Student Affairs Advisory Board, and then a couple others. And what else was I doing? I feel like that covers most of what I was doing on campus.
Awesome. Wow, that's a stacked list of organizations.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Oh, orientation. I was heavily involved with the orientation office. I was an orientation leader I want to say sophomore summer, and then I worked for the office every year after that in some capacity.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. All right. So can you walk me through a typical day as a student here? I know you had a lot going on.
Yeah, I'm like my hourly planner. A typical day, so I timed out how long it would take me to get ready so I could get the most amount of sleep. So I'd get up and then go to class, most likely. Obviously, I'm going to exclude senior year because it was COVID and that was weird. So I'd go to class, and then in between classes, most likely I'd probably work on stuff for orgs. Yeah, which was fine. Eventually, I'd get to homework. I used to get to homework very last, so go to class, work on org stuff, probably go to a student worker job, because I was always working during college. And then we'd have meetings for most of our organizations at 6, almost probably like 3 a week for different organizations. So then I'd go to that, then eventually I'd get home and do homework, and then hang out with my friends. I think most of my time outside of class was really spent like in those organizations, but that wasn't like tedious or felt like work because those were my friends, those were my communities, so it was really enjoyable to do that type of work at the time.
Awesome. So what was your most memorable experience as a student at SMU?
Tee-hee-hee. After COVID happened, and I guess it was like 2020 summer, obviously African Americans are being killed left and right in the news and in the nation, and SMU has not had a good track race relation-wise. As a history major, I spent a lot of times in the archives reading about how trash we were in like the 70s and 80s to our African American and students of color in general. And also during my tenure, I spent a lot of time talking and trying to understand how we can change that fact, but no one cared about it until, 2020, which is fine. So the most memorable thing was the president, Dr. Turner, and Dr. Major being like, okay, Association of Black Students, what do you want to do? What's up? And I was like, okay. So we had to create the demands. So I think creating the demands and then working and sadly creating the Black Unity Forum were the most memorable things that I did my senior year and probably my college career. I think one of the goals I had coming to this university was I like to leave spaces better than I found them, and I hopefully did that, but it definitely was like the worst experience ever to actually do it. I'm happy it's done. I'm happy that we did it. Happy that the demands exist and that the action plan exists and that the university is being held accountable to those things, but it was absolutely wrong of them to, like, expect and ask students to do that. I was, like, 21 at the time. Like, what do I know? I mean, I know some things about social justice, but they definitely shouldn't have relied on us in the way that they did.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for sharing. So earlier you mentioned that you had majored in political science with kind of like a focus on history, law and legal reasoning. You had a lot of majors and minors, kind of what I got. So why did you choose like kind of that arrangement of majors and minors?
Oh, the concept of like science or math is just not in my repertoire. And I always really liked political science and history in like high school, and I worked for the Capitol when I was in high school, so like I was like, okay, yeah, I'll be a lawyer. That makes sense. So I started with philosophy because that's how you get a high LSAT, and then I took on poli-sci. And then they were like, you have a lot of history credits from high school. Do you want to just minor in history? And I was like, okay, whatever. So I tacked that on, and then I did research and then political theory specialization, which was like probably the most interesting thing to me. I really enjoy political theory. So I tacked those on. Law and legal reasoning makes sense because like it ties all of them together almost, and it also just like gives you context for like how to read the law and how to love the law, I guess. And then the last thing I added was communications. I actually went on a trip to DC with the communications department just for fun. And I was like, whoa, I love it. It's phenomenal. And like the concept of communications is kind of weird and stretched, but I really, really love those professors and that department so much that I was like, yeah, I'm gonna minor. I think that was like the hardest minor to complete. It's like a 30-hour minor for no reason. But I think that was probably the most fun. Those classes are super discussion-based, and I think those classes were much more inquisitive, honestly, than any of my other classes to their students.
Awesome, thank you. So were there like many other kind of like Black students or Black women like kind of in your classrooms in the field that you had chosen, if you don't mind answering?
No. In all my political science classes, I had one friend who was Black and was in all of them with me, so we did them together. And like I think in most philosophy, I think I was probably, I dare say, one of the only Black female philosophy people to graduate from, like, my year, philosophy-wise. I'm like, that sounds correct. I'm thinking hard. Yeah, in political science classes, maybe there was, like, a couple of us, but we weren't inclined necessarily to, like, sit together or, like, work together all the time because, it would just look like, oh, all the Black girls are sitting together. Mm-hmm. And we were friends, but we didn't really... Political science classes are actually absurd because the students act like they are competing to get into their college right then and there for like law school, and they're not. It's super competitive, very unhealthy, and very ridiculous. And even when I had, like, other black students in political science classes, like, they wouldn't want to talk as much. And I don't care. I'll sweep the floor with these white boys. I don't care. It's funny, and I used to love doing it in class. So I would talk all the time, so they wouldn't talk as much. So it didn't really feel like I had, like, a group of, or, like, support in that way. Not that that was a bad thing, because I think another reason I chose SMU, I didn't choose it for diversity, obviously. And I think that I was well aware what the world would look like and what it does look like now that I'm in it. And I didn't want to not be prepared for that. So, not great, especially when in, political science classes, we talk about race and we talk about the politics of race and we talk about identity politics and all that stuff. And it wasn't fun, I guess, because students can say whatever they want to say in class. Well, I believe this, I believe this. Little did they know, I'm like, that's offensive and you just hurt my feelings. Like, it's not just their opinion. It's not just their ideals. It's like, well, that's me as a person. That's who I am and my history and things that affect my family and people who look like me. So, and I don't think that professors were very delicate with those situations. One terrible situation I had, a student was like, I am a neo-Nazi. He's like, I'm a neo-Nazi. I hate Jewish people. I hate black people. I hate immigrants. They're terrible. I hate them. And I was like, okay, well, I don't feel very safe. And I was like, oh, professor, like, I super don't feel safe in this class. And how dare he say that and you not, like, say anything about it. This is a philosophy class. We should talk about, like, the philosophy of those ideas or thoughts. And he yelled at me. The professor yelled at me in front of everyone. He was like, how dare you insult him? How dare you say his opinions aren't valid and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll kill you. So I left class. I just left class. And I, like, wrote a mean, nasty email. And I was like, that was wrong because these students, I'm the only black one in there. They already know I'm black. And you want me to have to fight with this boy and he's saying crazy stuff about being a neo-Nazi in class. It doesn't set up safety and assurance for me to sit in these classes and learn, and I really won't have it. So I made him publicly apologize to me in front of the whole class, and he was like, we're not saying that anyone's opinions were wrong, even though they were. He was like, but, I should have handled it differently. I shouldn't have yelled at Miss Clinton like that, blah, 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 blah. And it was terrible because that group, that classroom, like, after that, I got up and I was like, I'm so disappointed in all of you because you all want to study together. You all want to see my homework. You all want my notes. But none of you wanted to say anything when this boy was literally saying the most racist and crude things about me and about people who look like me. So I was like, don't ask me for homework. Don't ask me to help you with anything. I'm done talking to everyone in this class. That was very dramatic. But I felt like it was I think that was the only day that I wanted to transfer from SMU. Like, when that happened, I'd never wanted to transfer. I love this university. But that day I was like, I'm getting out of here. This is the worst. But then again, I don't know that it would be better anywhere else. So.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Yeah. I'm in a political science class right now, so I totally get what you're saying about the classroom environment. It can be very toxic sometimes, and you just don't want to be there. So,
it's so absurd. I'm like, you guys are fighting for nothing. Like, we don't have to act like this. We could be friends, But no, they don't want to do that.
Awesome. So did you have any mentors during your time at SMU that kind of made an impact on you?
I love this university. So first and foremost, Jennifer J.J. Jones. She's an angel, and she'd keep me in line a lot. I also think Erica Zamora was a mentor. She's not here anymore, regrettably, but she was a really big mentor and a really big pillar in, I think, the community of color at this campus. And I miss her dearly. I also think Dr. Majay was a mentor to me. He was really great and would always help me or answer questions that I had or, like, give me the down low if I needed it, which is really nice. And who else do I consider a mentor on this campus? Like, there has to be. Oh, yeah, the orientation office. Dr. Lindsay Koch and Megan Perez. I love them. They are like, you're crazy, but we like that. And they really, really just, like, take you as you are as a leader and try and mold you into something better. And I think that's really great and phenomenal for all students.
Awesome, thank you. So I feel like you may have touched on this, like, in your other answers, but just, like, overall, how well did you feel that your community was represented as SMU? And your community could mean whatever you'd like it to mean.
I think it was funny because obviously I'm not from an area with a lot of African Americans, and I didn't necessarily grow up with a lot of African American friends. When I came to college, I was like, I am an African American, and I would love to have some African American friends, which was a change for me. It was different. And I think it was only a positive positive change. It was really important to me, I think, to have that support system of people who looked like me and understood when I was going through things in class. I think as the years went on, our group became more visible. I think when I first came to SMU, like, we were there and we were having fun, but we didn't have any, I guess I'll say, like, clout with administration. Like, they didn't care about us. They weren't working on things as well as they could have been. They had the President's Roundtable, which is, like, all of the groups of color have a roundtable with Dr. Turner, like, 2 times a year, 3 times a year. But that pivots on minority majority, so we're, like, fighting for time with him, which doesn't feel good, to fight with other students of color for time. And they really weren't working on anything tremendous or doing anything great, in my opinion. So I think when I was a junior, we really were like, okay, this is an issue. Like, retention is so terrible in the Black community. We're all having problems with our scholarships and with our money. Like, this is not, and it's a pattern. And then microaggressions. They had created things like BERTs, which, like, you can report microaggressions, and then there was, like, incidents that happened on campus. Like, there's a couple neo-Nazi incidents that happened on campus, and, like, a couple incidents in 2016 that had happened on campus that we all knew about. And we're like, okay, SMU, like, clearly this is an issue that your students have. Regardless of whether you want to acknowledge it or not, something has to change. And then once we had the opportunity in summer 2020, we really ran with it and created the demands and worked really hard on those things. And I think our community became really, really visible at SMU. Whether that was positive or negative, can't say, but I think we definitely had a platform at that time, and hopefully I think we used it to the best of our abilities, or to the best of how we thought we could then.
Okay, awesome, thank you. All right, so what effect did, like, the lack of representation in the faculty and student population kind of have on you and kind of your student experience?
I think it would be seen in the classroom, obviously, like having conversations in philosophy classes, in poli-sci classes, even in communication classes. Like, I felt like I couldn't escape talking about race. Like, my first day of a communications class where, like, a Black man had died the day before by, like, a cop, and then we were talking about the Confederate flag. And I was like, hey, I know I'm the only person of color in here, but this is kind of disrespectful to me, and I'm having a really hard time with this. Could we, like, not talk about this today? And he was like, no, obviously we have to, because these students need, like, basically he was saying they needed to see these things and understand why they were wrong. And I was like, okay, well, these are 22-year-olds. So if they don't know that now, I guarantee you they won't want to know that. And I think it was hard for professors to empathize with me whenever I was like, hey, this time is really difficult. I'm doing a lot of work on all these things, so these topics are hurtful sometimes when students say things and you don't. Not that I want them to protect me, but I want them to say, like, something at least. I can't really explain it because it's not being done now, but yeah, and even with, like, some classes I took, we do projects. Like, we did an ancestry project. Okay, well, my parents are immigrants and my father's from Haiti, so there's no records, I can't, ancestry.com that shit and get information like the white students could, and it was really, really hard, and she did not care. There's, like, a couple students in the class who were like, hey, our parents are immigrants, we don't have these records, we cannot do this project. She was like, work harder, try harder, whatever. And, like, there's just not resources for us to have a long lineage like that. So things like that, I think, were just not well thought through, and I think that was, sucked. But I can't say that it wasn't also engaging. I think having those classes with mostly white students, mostly white men, and being able to stand up for myself and have arguments and have conversations really, really benefited me as a person and understanding, like, how to talk about those things and also reading about them. I think people are like, oh, I'm of this group, so I have the knowledge. No, there's literature. There's so much. There's books, there's research, so many things about race and intersectionality and critical race theory that I think people simply are not reading. So when they have those conversations, they can't get anywhere because they don't know anything. So I think that became very apparent to me in those classes. We talk about, what does it mean to be politically knowledgeable? Well, it means you need to know about geography and like 5 other subjects. And the students would be like, oh, it just means I need to know. And I'm like, well, you're not really thinking about the country on a national stage and on an international stage and how the country is made up of so many groups of people. Yeah, I think it just showed the lack of intersectionality in the university's curriculum.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah, as for the lineage thing, I completely understand. My parents immigrated from Pakistan. Like, those records just, they don't exist.
They just don't exist. Like,
And,
I don't know what my grandma was doing. Yeah, no.
No, I totally get that. Thank you for sharing. So today we have, like, you know, the Sky Office, the Multicultural Office thing, those resources like that. So I know, like, you recently graduated, but were those resources there when you were a student, or did you have some sort of resources?
Yes. So when I came to school, it was called the Office of Multicultural Student Affairs, the OMSA. And I think the change from the Office of Multicultural Student Affairs to the Office of Social Change and Intercultural Engagement is important. I think the fact that they said, okay, well, this is an office for students of color. This is like our living room. And it was a really, really great space. We were always in the OMSA. They had a big couch. It was gross, but we would always be in there having fun and having meetings and talking to people about things that were happening in class. And it was really a home for me on campus. When it split into two offices, it was like social change and then like community engagement. It felt really ugly to me because it felt like the university was saying, okay, well, when we do community service, what communities are we doing that service for? Let's put them together. It made no sense that multicultural student affairs and community service needed to be in the same space. Like, obviously, we do community service. We care about our communities, but the university as a whole doesn't. So it was weird. It left a bad taste in my mouth that they, like, smushed those two together. And then, obviously, when, you know, they kind of merged into the Sky now, it feels like, well, at least at the end of my career, it felt like, okay, well, is this really my space anymore? Because we're sharing with so many other groups, like the big event and things like that. And those events are great, and community service is fantastic, and we participate in those. But it felt like it wasn't our space anymore, and it wasn't for us. Because, you know, Office of Social Change and Community Engagement. It's really long. Like, social change, we need a space for African American students, for Indian students, for students of color. I think they tried to smooth it over and make it seem politically correct, but at the end of the day, we wanted a space, a living room, and I think they took that away from us.
Oh, awesome. Thank you for sharing. All right, so I think you may have answered this just kind of in your answers before, but what do you believe gave you the most support to obtain your degree?
I know I should say my parents because they paid for, you know, college. But I think probably, honestly, myself. I think at the end of the day, like, I wanted my degree and no one was going to stop me from getting it. And I left SMU for a while for medical leave. And even during that time, like, I took community college classes in my town so I could get ahead and come back. When I was back, I think, like, those mentors and those offices supported me emotionally. But academically, I would say, like, it was mostly myself because I wasn't necessarily getting it from my professors.
Awesome, thank you. And kind of on the flip side, is there anything that you believe may have limited your success as a student or anything like that?
Probably my own mouth. I think access and opportunity limit students here. And I think, like, my senior year, I was on a lot of committees choosing, like, people who got scholarships and things like that. And looking at those processes was strange. I think the university isn't clever at understanding need properly, and I think that opportunities like that limit students. And I also think if you're already not in those organizations, if you already don't know everyone there, if you already don't have an in, that also limits opportunity. Like Senate, for example. I've been in Senate for 4 years, so they can't get rid of me. But for other students, like, getting into Senate and being a part of those groups was really, really difficult. And I think that it can partially be about, like, who you know and if you're popular and things like that. But I think it can also partially be about, like, what connections you already have and your race and your gender and your sexual identity and things like that. I think it's much better now, but yeah, I don't think my opportunities were very limited because if I wanted something, I promise you I was going to work hard to get it in whatever way that meant, but I do see that other students' opportunities are limited.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of jumping off of that and kind of organizations that may have been limited for students, were there any organizations that you felt like you maybe, like, weren't allowed to or shouldn't join? Yeah, I think you like briefly alluded to that, but I just like to ask. Yes.
Yeah, so I first came to SMU, I was like, I'm going to be in a sorority. I want to be a Chi-O or, like, whatever, a Pi Phi, whatever. And I was really, really excited about it. And I went to all the events. I wanted to meet the girls. I was really, really open and nice to meeting them, and they just were not trying to speak to me. Truly and honestly was just plainly being ignored. And I was like, okay, ha ha ha, this happened one time. I'll go to a different sorority event. And it happened at all of them. And I didn't know if it was about race because there's a couple girls who were in those organizations who were African American. I think there's 3 my senior year, or my freshman year. So I didn't know if it was just they only needed one at a time, or I wasn't the right type that they were looking for, or whatever the case may be. But I absolutely do believe, and even I'm in a sorority now. I'm Alpha Kappa Alpha, which is a historically black sorority. And after becoming president of that sorority and trying to work with the white sororities, I'm going to call them the white sororities. The white sororities, oh my God, they don't know anything about people of color. They don't care to know. They don't necessarily want to do work with us. They'll say, oh, let's do something together, and then never follow up. And I think in the last year, they all got diversity and inclusion chairs. Does that make any sense? Let's think about it. If we're a white sorority and we need a diversity and inclusion chair, what programs do you think, what work, what research, what background knowledge are they doing? I think they're implementing things to go forward, but they're not looking at history. If your organization has had legacies for years and years and years, obviously all those legacies are white. No one of color can enter your organization, so you need to take down legacy structures. You need to think about, okay, well, how can we be more inclusive? What patterns are we exhibiting that are creating this all-white organization? And I don't think they want to do that work, and I don't think they're trying to do that work. And don't get me wrong, I love some of those girls in those sororities. I have very close friends in them, but I'm very honest with them about the issues that I see and the issues that I experienced. I have other friends who tried 2-3 times to be in white sororities. They're African American. And sometimes it comes down to a numbers game. How is it possible that these girls have good grades, are in a lot of things? They're very pretty. What's the problem then? Explain it to me. And they can't. So I think they absolutely bar people of color from those organizations. Again, I'm very aware there's a couple in, all of them now. And I think in the last year, Theta now has their first African American. She's very pretty. She's very nice. Whatever the case, that's absurd. Clearly, you're picking women as tokens, and whether they want to be tokens or, I'm not going to get into politics of that, but they are. When you look at them and you're like, oh, that's the black Theta. Okay, well, that's a problem. They've barred people for so long that they have to be one girl that they can go, oh, that's the black XYZ. That's a problem. And I think other organizations do that. I don't think it's just sororities. I think that the fraternities and the social, the business fraternities do that as well. Let me not say that. Things, organizations like that, whether it's social, whether it's business, whether it's community service, they all create kind of this elitist format, especially considering how much money they cost. When I was an orientation leader, I would tell students there are 200 organizations on this campus, free. They cost no money. If by spring semester, the only thing you can tell me you're in is a sorority that costs $3,000, that is the most boring crap I've ever heard in my life. You're not taking advantage of what SMU has to offer. You're not trying to widen your own horizons. And you're clearly more invested in elitism and social climbing than your own holistic well-being. I think it's absolutely absurd. I have a lot of, and I actually also think program council does that. I think program council makes it very hard for people of color to be in place, to be in charge, to be invested in the organization. I know a lot of people of color who were in my class who applied to be leadership roles when they were juniors and seniors that did not get those roles. And I was like, this organization is heavily white, controls a lot of the money on campus, program council and SF. And I think they create programs that are open and inclusive, but I think they also are lacking a lot of diversity and that diverse eye. I think sometimes when programs happen and people of color are like, well, that's weird, why do they do that? It's because no one was in the room of color who had any other perspective. And I think they could really benefit from that, and I think they create barriers that don't let people of color in those spaces. That's my soapbox for. I think Senate does it too, but then I became membership chair and I was like, not anymore. I had to personally fix that myself in Senate. When I joined Senate, it was all white frat boys. It was the scariest thing ever. I was like, girl, let me cover my drink. But by the time I left, it was so much more diverse. It was so much more inclusive. And I think it's because literally someone of color was in there changing that pattern. So yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on those.
Oh, awesome. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. So is there anything at all that you believe could have helped you more in your journey at SMU?
Yes, I think I think if people listened, I think a lot of the things that happened my senior year, specifically a lot of the positive change, could have happened my freshman year if anyone had listened. Like, I think all the offices, like the OMSA, JJ, myself, other people of color were like, hey, these things need to change, and we have ideas and solutions. But nobody cared until it was trendy in 2020. I absolutely think that the university was pressured by, politics and social justice happening around the country that they finally made those changes. But they could have. I think SMU doesn't try to be ahead of the curve. We wait until our peer institutions do something. We're like, is Baylor doing it? Is TCU doing it? Okay, maybe we'll do it too. We could be at the forefront of those conversations. We could be at the forefront of those changes, but we're not. And it's because we don't want to be or we're scared. I'm not sure which. But I absolutely think if people had just listened earlier to the intelligent men and women on this campus who are in staff, faculty, and student positions that were saying these things, then we would be looking at a very different SMU now.
Oh, for sure. Thank you. So you briefly touched on this, but I'd just like to ask. So obviously you'd mentioned that around the summer of 2020, there was a lot of Black Lives Matter, so, social media, things like that, especially about kind of the relations with the police department, the African American community, especially in Dallas.
Yeah.
So could you share with us any insight or experience with police enforcement you might have had with SMU? And you can answer this question however.
SMU's police department, I think I've had positive and negative experiences with them. I've had positive experiences when I was working for one of the offices, they would come in and say oh, hey, we know you're doing orientation. We'll be there to keep everything safe. So nice to meet you. And they're very nice and friendly. But to be honest, I'm in a white space. I'm the only person of color in that space. And I'm not a threat because I'm a small girl. And, I'm working on something. So obviously those interactions are positive. And I even have conversations with them about, hey, this is an issue. You guys clearly stop more people of color. But I also think when I have to think about the police department, students who call and are this person is suspicious. It's the white students and they're calling about black students. That's happened multiple times to all of us. We'll be walking back my freshman and sophomore year from Mac's place or, being loud and rowdy. And the police will stop us and be like, have you guys been drinking? What are you guys doing? Do you guys go here? And we're like, yes, we go here. Do you not see these Mac's boxes? We're just being loud or not even being loud, having fun and having conversation and not doing anything threatening. So I think, whenever we were on campus and running around all the time, we got stopped a lot. And it nothing ever happened, but I think it was frustrating being stopped all the time and asked, do you go here? Where's your student ID? What dorm are you trying to get to? Okay, sir, it's 9 p.m. I'm going to get there. Don't worry. It's not a big deal and I'm not hurting anybody. So I think those were frustrating moments. And I didn't know if it was the police that were just stopping us because they were someone's rowdy or these are students of color or maybe someone made a call. I don't know. But regardless, it happened. And it was definitely a macroaggression, if I could say, and very, very frustrating. But then obviously as I got into positions of leadership and more visibility on campus, I was treated differently by the police department. Every time they would stop me, they'd say, do you want to ride? I'd say, hey, Lexi, do you want to ride? I'll give you a ride to your dorm, to whatever. So I think the conversation changed whenever it was made very clear to them that I was not a threat, which is problematic and they need to work on.
Oh, for sure. Thank you. All right. So as you reflect back on your time at SMU, just overall, how do you feel about it? I know it's a general question, but just like to bring it back.
I think I feel mixed emotions about it. I am happy that they're doing the demands, they're doing the work, they're interested in what students of color have to say, and I believe that they are, but on the other hand, it was difficult. It was not always fun. It was difficult going to boulevards all the time and not feeling like I could go under people's tents or not feeling like I belonged in those spaces. It was difficult being in class and having to feel like I was fighting for my life in class, arguing with these students and having no support from professors, even though literature supported what I was saying. Yeah, but I think overall, again, I left the space better than I found it, and that's what I think makes me really feel content. And I love this university. Don't get me wrong. I bleed red and blue, pony up. But I see her problems very, very clearly, and I see that there's honest solutions that maybe just cost too much money or the university isn't interested in right now that I think is foolish and that they could really work on. But yeah, overall, I'm I guess it was positive. I have great friends who I love. I came to homecoming, and we all got to see each other again. And I was like, wow, like this was a positive experience having all this community after the fact.
Oh, for sure. Thank you. So just kind of like moving on to time after SMU, even though it was pretty
Recent.
Pretty recent time. All right. So like what does life look like right now after graduation?
So I moved to Chicago, very cold, to do consulting, which is not political science. But I really, really enjoy it. I think that SMU has set me up to understand how to navigate a lot of new spaces professionally, which I think is very important. And I think, there's a SMU alumni chapter in Chicago that I'm going to join soon, and I've already met girls at my company who are like, I went to SMU. And I was like, oh my gosh, no way. So on that front, like, I really enjoy what I'm doing now, and I feel like SMU did set me up for the best experiences in the professional world. So I guess those are all positive. But it's really fun being a 20-something in a big city with a nice apartment, and, I'm having, like, the time of my life, to be honest. Feeling like Mary Tyler Moore.
Awesome. That's so nice to hear. So if you could go back and do anything differently in your SMU career, is there anything?
Yeah. I would win student body president. I would have done my campaign differently, so I would have won. I think I would have started to push earlier on, like, things I wanted to see changed. Because obviously they were so willing senior year, but I was like, if I had started differently, sophomore year with this, could we already be further? I have no changes in my studies. I'm, like, happy with my studies. I completed research, graduated. Study-wise, we're good. But, like, social justice and community-wise, I think I would have engaged with more communities than I did. I feel like I engaged with a lot, but I think I would have even done more, engaged with more communities than I had, when I was here, and then just, pushing social justice earlier in my career to see how they would have responded. I tried to push it, but maybe if I had done it differently. I think retrospect and, like, hindsight is 20/20, so I'm, like, thinking about it now, but I have a clear vision of it, so.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. And then I think you mentioned this, but, like, do you still, like, try to remain involved with SMU and, like,
yes,
anything like that?
I want to be in the I'm like, Black alumni, email me back.
Mm-hmm.
I when I came for homecoming, I went to all the alumni events for, like, CCPA and the distinguished alumni events, because I was invited to those, and the Black alumni, and I'm like, hey, you guys, like, I have ideas, I have energy, I have a pretty good idea of what student life is like. I just graduated. I'm super interested in helping. Please let me help. And that has been a very slow process, surprisingly. I'm not currently, like, a member of any alumni organizations on campus, even though I'm, like, emailing them all the time. So working on that, I do need to get more involved in that way, or they need to, like, open up and let me in. But I think they're like, oh, we just got rid of her. She's just going to come in and change stuff again, which is true, I will. But yeah, like, I care about this university a lot, so I want to see the things that I put in motion completed. And I think past that, like, I'll probably always try and be connected to the university just because it was great, and I really enjoyed it.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. So just kind of wrapping up, is there anything you feel that I may have missed which you'd like to, like, further discuss or anything?
I think there's so many things, but not because you missed them, just because they're so intricate. Like, I think the only thing I would mention that I think is important in the oral history is that over my 4 years, I saw Black spaces absolutely disappear. Like, and spaces of color, like, not only the OMSA, but, like, the way Hughes Trigg changed, although I think it changed for the better, I don't think it creates a space for people to, like, congregate other than for meetings. Like, there's just not space for us to hang out and, like, talk about things unless it's, like, an open space, which, I'm not always trying to be in the open. And I think whenever the Betas and some of the multicultural Greek organizations lost their house, I think that was really, really prominent on campus, and no one really spoke about it too much, but that used to be the Alpha House, which is a Black fraternity. Then I went to Multicultural Greeks, and then now it's Daniel House. So watching those spaces of color literally be taken away, I think that's really important, and that no one really understands that that's happened so many times. Like, our sorority, we used to have a house that was taken away from us. The Deltas, which are also a Black sorority, used to have a house, and it was taken away from us. And whenever I've tried to talk to, like, administration and say, hey, like, we want a house, we want a space for students of color, they say, okay, well, no, because honor students want that space. And we say, why? For community and retention. Okay, well, why do we want that space? Guess what? For community and retention. So I think, and obviously, like, looking at the 10-year plan for SMU's campus, all the Greek housing will eventually be gone. And I don't think anyone's like thinking about how those changes in literal space on campus, physical space, are going to impact student life. But maybe that's a conversation for another time.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much for coming in today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yes, for sure. I think this was a very insightful interview, especially since you just graduated. So it's nice to hear just kind of about especially your involvement on campus, I think. So awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.